One nice thing about the NICU is it's 2 patients for 1 nurse, so easy to get attention. And my dad really didn't do anything other than he kept thinking he was in bed and kept trying to get up, and he thought the nurse was my sister. And he's like, I can't believe you became a nurse. That's cool. Or we'd ask him where he was, and it was always pretty funny. Where are you, Dad? Texas. Why would it be in Texas? Your grandfather's trying to show off. I thought that was funny. And we'd ask how he's feeling. And he'd say all kinds of different things. Shit sandwich without the bread. Stuff like that. But he had visitors. He had his golf friends. And that's another thing my uncle complained about. He likes his golf buddies more than he likes me. And all I thought was, well, I wonder why. Although my dad kept trying to get up, so they finally had to tie him to the bed. This will become interesting later. And then, since my uncle and grandmother wouldn't travel every day to UAB, the phone calls began. The phone calls. And I told you before, on one of the earlier videos, my grandmother had a sitter. And she had different people that sat with. I don't know where she found these people. Because some of these people were thieves at best and useless at worst. There were some good ones, but the ones they found just, I don't know, they just found a magazine where it was, let's find the worst people we can find to look after someone. But anyway, he calls me and says, well, the lady here is in CNA school, and she says your dad has to eat every 2 hours to get better. Oh, I mean, to hell with the doctors at the best hospital in the state and one of the best in the Southeast. We need to listen to a woman that's doing her CNA license. And I tried to be nice. I was like, oh, well, no, that's great, but I think I'm going to listen to the doctors. He got mad because we didn't defer to him. And he said, you just don't want your dad to get better. And then he hung up on me. And that was it. That was my breaking point. I called him and I said, listen, from now on, you don't call us. We call you. You need to leave us alone. And of course, oh, I can't believe you would do this to your own uncle. Yeah. He tried that guilt route. It didn't work so hot. Because my dad wouldn't eat. They will literally give you whatever you want to eat, and he just wasn't eating. I don't think he remembered he wanted to eat, and he just wouldn't eat. And he actually had a lot of fluid on his lungs, and I speculate he still has fluid on his lungs because that man coughs like a 2-pack a day habit. But then they had to get the fluid out of his lung, and it was always funny. It go back into this little collection thing. And I always told my sisters, like, that looks like a Coke Icy. And it ruined Coke Icy's for him because it really did look like the same consistency. He's in UAB for a while, and he's pulling a lot of stuff. Like, he ripped his collection thing out of his head, and the nurse just flips out because he does it right before the shift. And other people during that time, I can't state enough, were good to us. Like, I had friends come down that take me to lunch, come see my dad, hang out with us. My grandmother sent us a ridiculous amount of gift cards because we had like $50 gift card to Domino's. So I ordered a pizza online that cost $50 and it melted the box. I still think that's funny. And me and my sister had a good routine going because I wasn't working. I would spend the morning with him, and then she'd get off work and come back about 2, and me and her'd go back. And for a while there, we'd go by Jim and Nick's and drink and just try to unwind because there's a shift change and the schedule worked out that way. And in ICU, they eventually moved him to a regular room, and I think my aunt liked having me around because she has all daughters and she never had a son, and she was just like, he eats everything. There's never any leftovers. It's great. she wasn't used to it. She wasn't used to having somebody that could eat, because my cousins are all tiny. And then something else happened. My dad got MRSA, which is a type of staph infection. I don't know the specifics. I went to business school. It's like methyscosal resistant staphyla, whatever. It's very common in hospitals because hospitals are dirty as shit. Go figure. And he got it in like his nose and his throat. So we had to wear these yellow gown-like things. And I don't know. And of course, my uncle and grandmother come to visit, and I tell him he has to wear something, and you can't tell him anything. You tell him to do something, he's like, "What's MRSA?" And his mother didn't know either, my grandmother. And he starts screaming at the nurses, "My mother's 80 years old, and she don't know what MRSA is." And I said, "Yes, you need to wear this. It's very contagious." I don't need to do that. And none of his golf buddies wouldn't wear one either, because he pointed out, well, I'm not going to kiss him, so I don't see why I need to do that. And the regular room was nice, and then we get to rehab. And it's funny because his dad, my grandpa, had been at the rehab over 10 years before, so we'd been there, we knew where it was close to a lot of stuff we knew. And that's where things got a little more interesting, because my dad became a little more mobile in the wheelchair, and they would make him he has no patience. They would make him he had to do musical therapy, and I went to that, and it was great. He had to play the tambourine, and my dad is not a musician. He is not musically inclined. He likes music, but he never played an instrument. And they tried to get him to play the recorder, and he snapped it in two. He was having none of it. And when they're trying to move them from therapy to therapy, because it's groups, they'd park their wheelchairs and leave them. And my dad's like, why would you take me away from watching football to having to do this trifling nonsense? So he'd keep trying to run away. He kept trying to get away, to get out of there. And finally they called us and said, "We need somebody to spend the night." And my sister said, "I'll do it." And they had to put him in a stroke victim bed that you had to zip him into. And my uncle didn't like that, because they came one day, and my dad was a choking risk. He couldn't have just anything. Like, it had to come from a doctor. But of course, my relatives, doctors are just suggestions. We can really do whatever we want. And he offered my dad a piece of gum, and my dad's like, "Oh, sure." I said, "No, he can't have gum." And once again, I dared to tell my uncle he couldn't do something. He went outside and yelled at a random tech, "Can he have gum?" I don't know. So we had to deal with that. And all that went along with it. It was exhausting, because he got mad that he couldn't have gum. And we had to zip my dad into the bed, because one time we were leaving, and he didn't like being zipped into it, and we had to do it. If that'd been me, he would have done the same thing, I think. You can rest on your laurels about, "Oh, well, we shouldn't have to do that." No, if the doctor says to do it, do it. This isn't or, it's do it. So we had to zip him into bed, and he got so mad. He said, "You little son of a bitch." And he got done with rehab. He got him back home, and he lost a lot of weight. Pretty thin man. He'd put on a little weight in retirement, but other than that, he worked out 3 days a week. He could eat, because he'd always been pretty thin, but he lost all his muscle, every bit of fat on him. He got down to pretty thin, like 138 pounds, and he's 6'3". And he had to do rehab, and at home, he got through rehab, and after a few months, he was back driving and back to normal. Other than the scar on his head, it's like it never happened. So, the doctor said he was going to die, and he's lived for 8 more years. Now, he still had some lingering effects from it, but other than that, he's better. Although his personality has changed. For a while, when he got back home, it'd be 2:30 in the afternoon. Are we ever going to eat? So we would eat at like 3:30. And when you eat at 3:30, you are starving at 8 o'clock. I don't care how much you eat. And so I had to deal with that for a while. And as my uncle, we haven't forgiven, we haven't forgotten. We talk about this just about every time we all get together. I guess I've forgiven him, but I haven't forgotten and never will.